My doctor was Peter Davison. It was a doctor that I grew up watching. The adventures were the ones that inspired me to do things I wanted to do. And 2 years ago, he was the doctor who I got to write for with Big Finish, which is still one of the highlights of my career. He is the only doctor that is a doctor's doctor. Please give a large hurricane hoo round of applause for the fifth doctor, Mr. Peter Davison!
You know exactly what through there. I've been watching the presidential candidates, and that's what they do every time they appear, where they kind of go. Okay, how are you all? Good rest.
Right, first off, I want to just check. Hands up here, whose doctor is the fifth doctor? Excellent. The rest of you can all leave.
Please feel free to mind. I won't be offended.
So, anyway, obviously there's a lot of people here who have only seen you as the fifth doctor, who are still learning about the things you've done, but it wasn't really what you started with. Obviously, I mean, people in the UK, we knew you as Tristan.
Tristan!
Yes.
But again, that wasn't what you started with. The first thing I believe you ever did was
What are you working your way around to here?
No. I mean, you started quite young. What was it that made you decide you wanted to become an actor?
Well, you know, I did amateur dramatics. When I was at school, I was involved in drama, but actually behind the scenes. I was in charge of the lighting at school, and I was pretty rubbish at it. But we had a drama teacher, and she suggested I join the local amateur dramatics. Do you have amateur dramatics over here?
Yeah.
Good. Well, so I joined that, and I just sort of got a taste for it. It helped that I failed pretty much all my exams at school, and so I had really no option but to find some kind of gainful employment. So I applied to drama school and was fortunate enough to get in.
What was your first thing that you remember doing? You said you did amateur dramatics. What was the first part that you actually remember?
Well, funny enough, I had to kiss a school teacher. One of the schools.
No, wait, was it a play?
The school. It was a play called Antigone, and the leading lady, Antigone, was actually one of the teachers at the school, and I didn't know when I went for the part. There's one point where he has to kiss Antigone. I played the sort of boyfriend. And it was the most embarrassing moment. You can imagine what it's like, kissing a school teacher. And she was only probably about 6 or 7 years older than me. But when you're 16, someone who's 23 just seems ancient. So it was just and she said every time I kissed her, I just blushed. With bright red.
And I'm assuming this wasn't the end of term, so you probably didn't have to go to school the following day, and they were...
No, it was. I just lived with the embarrassment for a good year and a couple of years.
So obviously you became an actor. You started off. You did a lot of stage plays. And you did the TV. You became known for Tristan, and obviously did. At one point, you were one of the most popular faces on British TV because of the All Creatures Great and Small being so popular. And then you become the Time Lord.
Yes.
You become the fifth doctor. Had you watched it before you went for it? Did you know anything about it?
Oh, well, my one claim to fame is I was the first doctor who actually was brought up on Doctor Who. I think I was 12 when it started, 11 or 12. So I was a huge fan. Certainly the first two doctors. They were my doctors, William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton. So, when I went to drama school, I thought, it crossed my mind it would be nice to get a part in Doctor Who, as most actors did, but I never for the life of me thought that I would actually be offered the Doctor. So it was a tremendous shock when I got the phone call, and I just really didn't know how to respond to it.
So they literally just came to you and said, would you like to do it?
Yeah, I'd worked with
John. Subtly been doing things in All Creatures Great and Small, where there's Doctor Who related lines or something.
Well, I was a pretty unlikely Doctor Who then. Now, of course, looking from the perspective of 2012 with the modern Doctors, I don't seem out of place at all. But at the time, I was by far the youngest Doctor. and it was a real departure. That was also a shock to work through in my mind how I would play the Doctor. But no, I worked with John Nathan Turner on All Creatures Great and Small. He had a sort of he was in charge, production manager, I think he was called. And he'd moved on from All Creatures to become the producer of Doctor Who. And I hadn't seen him or spoken to him for a couple of years, and he just out of the blue one day rang me up and said, how would you feel about being the next Doctor?
And it must have been a bit of a daunting position, because at that time Tom Baker had been doing it for about 412 years.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, obviously, I know these days you hear the stories of how Matt chose the way he looked and the way he was acting and things like this. I mean, how much say did you have in the way that your Doctor became?
Well, you could make suggestions. You know, I came up with the idea of the cricketing theme because they said they wanted something younger, sportier, and more eccentric. And I thought, well, cricket's pretty eccentric. Certainly to you lot, isn't it? I'll explain the rules later on. In a few hours. So I thought that would be a rather neat trick. And I was very fond of cricket. I did like cricket. So I had suggestions. I could make suggestions. I certainly couldn't dictate anything. I mean, apart from everything else, the first few stories I did had been commissioned as Tom Baker's stories. So, you know, my input was sort of fairly minimal there. They obviously were adjusted for my Doctor. But I always approached the thing with John, with the producer, in a kind of wheedling, nagging way. I could get my own way if I suggested. And also that really good thing, which he fell for quite a lot, is if you somehow suggested to him that it was actually his idea first. You'd sort of say, you know that thing you mentioned a few weeks ago? And of course he couldn't remember if he mentioned it or not. He thought, oh yeah, if I mentioned it, it must be a jolly good idea. And we'll go on
so yes, so you become the Doctor, you're on set, it's the first day. How was it feeling? As someone who grew up with Doctor Who, how did it feel to be on that set? I mean, what was the first scene you filmed?
Well, of course, the very first film the scene I filmed was me turning from Tom Baker into me, yeah, which was at the end of Tom Baker's season. So I was coming into a set just literally for a couple of hours. And because Doctor Who inevitably, and oddly enough, it still works like this, that's the one comforting thing, that we're always behind schedule. I mean, you're always up against the clock, and I was meant to, I think, start this scene at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The filming ran until 10 o'clock in those days, and I think at 9:30 they finally got around to starting the sequence where I would suddenly turn into Tom. And you know, I was around from 4 o'clock, and Tom was there, and he was very nice. And I told this story. He said in the tea break, come up to the bar for a drink. Which I thought was very inadvisable. But but the BBC bar was so crowded in those days. He leaned forward at one point and said, I've just got one piece of advice for you, Peter. And then I just couldn't hear what he said. It was one of those moments where you just can't go, oh, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? So I just went, oh, right, yeah. To this day, I have no idea what the advice was. I mentioned this to Tom, I did this signing with him about 2 years ago. Of course, he couldn't remember what the advice was either, so it's lost in the mists of time. It's a great piece of advice. I just assume I didn't take it.
But you did have advice from Patrick Troughton.
Yes, I did. I knew Patrick, and I met him again. He'd done an episode of All Creatures Great and Small, and I met him. This is true. It sounds bizarre, but I met him at. The BBC had this what they call the Horseshoe Car Park in front of the building, and if you were a sort of a select cast member, you used to be able to get into the car park. Now, one of those things, of course, is being Doctor Who. So Patrick had been Doctor Who, and I just drove up behind him, and he had just been turned away from the car park because he was no longer. And they just waited.
You're behind him.
Yeah, exactly. They just waited me through. So I met him. He had to go down and park down the road. So I met him as we were walking. I said, "I'm really sorry about that." He said, "Oh, it's fine." And he said, "Just do 3 years and get out." Because that's what he did. That's what he did. So I kind of stuck to that advice. Really, it did ring true with me. I'd done All Creatures for 3 years at that time, although we went back to it. And 3 years seems a nice time. It's not too little, not too much. So in the end, that's what I did.
And of course, your 3 years that you did, you had a variance of companions. You had people leaving. You had one of the first real in-your-face deaths of a companion with Adric.
Yes, very rare, I think.
And I think there had been a couple before that, but they were not as big a characters. No. And then you left, but you're one of the few doctors that has also come back.
Yes.
You know, because you said with the second Doctor coming back with 5 Doctors.
Yes.
I mean, how did you find that coming back to Doctor Who after walking away?
Well, I crossed over. You see, I suppose I'm the only person at the moment who's connected the classic series with the new series by doing the time crash scene. And that is a real step, because I think probably when Patrick and when John Pertwee came back to the 5 Doctors, it was coming back into a very familiar setup. I mean, the TARDIS looked roughly the same. We were shooting it in the same way. When I did Time Crash, it was done in Cardiff. It was on what they call a standing set. In other words, it's not a set that they put up every 2 weeks. It was just there. And it felt very much like Alien, if you'll forgive the Alien territory, because it was at that time David Tennant's domain, and so I felt. But it was as the day wore on. We did it in just one day. Incidentally, I was doing it at the time. This is there's a gentleman in the audience. I know he's just shaved his beard off. I don't know if he's here. He's there? No, he's not there. Anyway, but I was doing Spamalot in London, Monty Python, for which I had a beard. I was playing King Arthur, and I knew I had to go down and do this doctoring. So at the end of the performance on Saturday night, I had to shave my beard off, which had been there for some months and was very painful. Get in the car, be driven down to Cardiff to get about 4 hours sleep, to wake up in the morning to go and shoot this Time Crash. But it was fantastic. We started off, I was a bit nervous, and we avoided getting down to business by taking photographs and things like that. But then once we got down to it, it was a brilliant little scene that Stephen Moffat had written, which was meant to run, I think, about 13 minutes. But both David and I like to think he copied me in this, but David and I speak very quickly when we're doing little acting stuff. And so we got through it in about 8 minutes, I think. It was very, very quick. But it was brilliant fun to do. And by the end of it, as is quite often the case, I was warming up and I thought, yeah, I could really get used to this set. Maybe I'll come back for good, The only thing I did wrong was, there was one point where both we're circling the TARDIS, and before we bump into it, and the nature of the TARDIS is, there are all these levers. In my day, I just used to go around pressing as many buttons and pull as many levers as you possibly can to confuse the sound department in the dark. Because every time you press something, they would have to put a little beep on it. So the more things you press, they used to drive them nuts. You're going to come up with 150 different sounds because you press so many buttons. David said to me, I've only got one lever that in my mind I know what it does. And I kept moving that one lever. I think it might be to open the doors, I'm not sure what it was. But so of all the levers, I kept, I'm really sorry. But then when we did another take, I kept forgetting it because I was just pressing all these buttons and pushing these levers. You push the lever again! Anyway, it was fine. I got the last laugh, didn't I? Some.
That's an area that is well known as the fact that obviously he is your son-in-law in your life. At that time, was he dating Georgia at that time?
No.
So he wasn't, because I had this vision that he was acting with you and at the same time thinking, oh my God, it's the father-in-law.
Not unless I've got my timescale wrong, and I don't think I have, no. Because Georgia, when she went up for a part in Doctor Who, and earlier in that season that she eventually worked in, and And then they kind of offered it to her. I can't remember which one it was, but they offered it to her, but then they said, look, you know, we think you're great, we'd like to offer you this part, but if you'd just like to hang on, a few episodes later we've got an even better, a more perfect part for you. So she rang me up and said, what should I do? I said, well, you know, I suppose you have to sort of trust them if they think they've got a better part. And of course, when it came to it, the part was this story called The Doctor's Daughter. So it wasn't so much had a better part, they had a better title. It just fitted so perfectly, you know, she's the Doctor's daughter. So that was when she first met David. She hadn't met him before that, and I didn't think she had. And then it was a few months after she'd done that. It wasn't even while they were working together. They just, I remember Georgia just rang up and said, "Oh, well, I'm coming to see you in the show, and I'm bringing someone." I said, "Oh, who are you bringing?" He said, "Oh, this is someone." So then I was David Tennant. I said, what's going on here? Anyway, I didn't inquire, but then as things just progressed, and then fantastic, you know, they got married.
So going back to, obviously, the first time that you were the Fifth Doctor, usually when you do a convention that I've seen you at, you've often got some of your companions with you.
Yeah.
And obviously you're always saying, gushing how great they are, how wonderful they are.
What tapes have you been watching?
None of them are here this time.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Obviously you've run the gauntlet of companions.
Who can I insult this afternoon? No, yes, yes.
What was your favourite era of the time that you did? Because you had the time when you were the massive full TARDIS. You had the times when it was just you and Perry. You had people leaving and coming back.
Yes, it's a difficult one that, because I mean I did feel at the time when I started there were just too many of us in the TARDIS. However, in a way, it kind of looking back on it with hindsight, I rather like those stories. But I did kind of look for just the Doctor and a companion, because in a way it works in my head, maybe because when I watched it that had been the situation. It worked for me in terms of making it better if there was just me and a companion. So you had at the most two threads. What happened quite often, especially when Matthew was there, and when Mark was there especially, because they came up with this idea that Mark should be trying to kill me all the time. That the only way they could avoid that story bit for the actual crux of the present that story of that episode was to lock him up. So they'd have this thread where usually Mark was locked up in a cell or something and couldn't get out, so it was easily explained why he wasn't trying to kill me. And then, so there was just there were too many things going on. But I enjoyed making it. I mean, they were fun to have around because they were so different.
Well, I was going to ask this because, I mean, yesterday Fraser, and I think today as well in his talk, Fraser was saying that when he was, especially when it was him and Patrick and with Deborah, they were playing jokes with each other, they became a family, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when you're working with the same people so often,
yes.
Did you find it was becoming a family? Did you find it was a very close thing? Were you playing jokes with each other?
Yes, it was a family. It was just a slightly dysfunctional family. Yes. I mean, Matthew had his own speech style. We used to very cruelly insult him all the time. But he used to say, no, not really. But I mean, there was a moment when, because he was a bit upset, and I understand now looking back on it because I've got two boys, and when we were watching the new series, and we all thought Rose was going to die, they were sobbing away, my children. But when John came up with the idea of killing off a companion, I said I think it's quite a good idea because it introduces that idea that that all is not going to be automatically well.
Suddenly it's not safe.
And I notice now when I watch programs, I was watching one the other day, how much more tension-filled it is if you get the feeling that no one is safe. So when I was actually watching The Walking Dead, which I love. You see, I love because you just don't know who's going to die in that program. I mean, there is no one is safe. Well, maybe, Ed Lincoln's safe, but no one else is, and people die all the time. And the problem with that thing where you just get a core of people who are meant to be in danger and facing disaster, but actually they're always going to be fine, is it just lessens the impact. So I thought it was quite a good idea that John came up with, killing one of the companions. Of course, Matthew wasn't too happy. And I spent many a long, fun-filled hour trying to explain to him that it would make you special, Matthew. It's like people would never forget.
How was it decided? Was it like lock and draw, or was it just like a further dart into a picture?
No, I think... I think it was just straws, but I may have cut one of them shorter than the others. No, I don't mean that. I didn't get it. No. I think it was just there were too many, and Matthew maybe had been there the longest. I don't know, or you know, he just felt it was probably his role. He was the one to bite the dust.
Now, I mean, obviously, you moved on to do other things on TV, but you did return as a Doctor in Big Finish.
Yes.
And recently, you've been doing the series where you've returned with Tegan, Nissa, and Turtle.
Yeah.
When you started that, when you went back for the first time, and I think it was like 20 odd years between times, how did that feel, going back and acting those parts?
Not even slightly different. I mean, it was different, but I always think the secret, I went back to All Creatures Great and Small as well, much later on, and I think the secret is not to try and be different. People actually don't change. You are a few years older, and maybe, that's a problem with Doctor Who because you're meant to be the same age theoretically, but we just slotted into it, exactly. And the same old banter as well, actually, funny enough. I often say to Barnaby, or whoever's directing the Big Finish things, you really ought to record the off-mic stuff as well and release that, because, outtakes, because it's very funny.
But then you will get sued.
Yes, we would get sued, and heavily censored as well, actually.
Obviously, moving out of Doctor Who, you're now back up. You obviously did an amazing run on Legally Blonde.
Oh yes, a long time.
Which actually stopped you from doing Gallifrey.
Yes, it did,
anyone who's seen the videos will have seen. And I think everybody's seen them now.
Has anyone seen the videos?
Yes. Where's ours?
Well,
You get him. You get him. Would you rather we did a video? It can be a
Alright, I'll see if I can lock one up later on. I've got another camera.
And of course now you're doing, is it Law and Order UK?
Law and Order UK, yeah.
And you're doing that, is Freema still in that?
Well, she was in the last series I did, but I don't think she's in this series because, of course, she's doing... We exchanged little text messages about a month ago, and she said, "I'm sorry, I won't be joining you." But no, she's doing this prequel to, is it Sex and the City?
Yeah.
Yes. Is that started going out yet?
No.
Hasn't it?
No. The Harry Diary.
Or have you just not been watching hard enough? I thought it had started going out, maybe it hasn't. Yeah, she's doing that anyway.
Okay. So what's next for you? What would you like to be doing? What would you like to see yourself doing in the next few years?
Oh, I don't know. I'm very happy just to drift along and let things come along. I think I'd like to do a straight play at some point.
So staying on stage?
Yeah, still on stage, yeah. But only because I just feel that I haven't done it. I did this musical, I did Legally Blonde for 2 years. That's really pretty easy work, actually. And I just think I should tax myself, I should challenge myself.
Would you want to play a villain?
Oh, I don't know. Not necessarily a villain, just something with a bit of meat to the part, whether it's villainous or not. I did just do a Lewis, which is a spin-off of Morse, playing a villain. So I was a very nasty bloke in that. At least that's what I was trying to do. It probably came out as being terribly nice.
And obviously, of course, although you've done Doctor Who, you're also one of the few actors who has crossed fandoms. Who here watches Sherlock? Who here knows that Peter Davison was in Sherlock? You were in Sherlock.
Listen, I'm not claiming this as a credit, all right? The people have found out about this. I got a phone call from Sue Virtue, who's married to Stephen Moffat, who produces Sherlock, and she said, we need a voiceover for we've got a sequence in the planetarium, and we need a voiceover for the person describing something in the planetarium. So she said, would you do it? I said, yeah, of course I'll come and do it. So I went along and did it, and it looked at about 10 minutes. And she rang me up later, because I know her quite well, she rang me up later. I'm not sure it was a good idea getting you to do that part, because we've got to pay your residuals now on this thing. So this tiny little voiceover I did. I think she probably wishes she just got Stephen to do it or something. It didn't make that much of an impact. But yeah, I was in Sherlock. Absolutely. Yeah!
We're going to open it up for questions, but because there's obviously quite a few people in this queue now, I don't want to miss anybody. So what I'd like to do, even though we don't have a microphone, if you've got a question for Peter, could you stand in the middle, in the aisle? And that way we've got like one at a time. First person there gets to ask, and then we can go on.
And could you preface every question with, "You're my favourite doctor"? It's really just for the video camera, so if anyone ever,
we don't have a microphone, so you are going to have to shout.
I'll try and repeat the questions.
Right, so, sir, what are you doing? No, I don't want to go first. You go first. No, I don't want to go first.
I only got up there by dint of happening to sit further up, so I figured at least one. But fine.
So we make a line though, rather than sort of generic crowd.
You have a nice loud voice.
Right, go for it.
Yeah, this is really cool because you were the first doctor I saw after Tom Baker, and you're the earliest doctor I've gotten to see live, so this is a real treat. Thank you. My question is, you've been doing conventions for 30 years now, and of course you've been Doctor Who for a lot of that time too. But for the conventions, how do you keep it fresh for yourself and for the audience? And not just hear the story about the horse running into the gate or what's your son-in-law.
Yeah, it's a very difficult balance because sometimes you're very aware, especially as I've got another one of these panels tomorrow, and you're very aware sometimes that the question will be asked, to which I have to give the same answer. And you're very aware, I don't want to be boring about it, they would have heard these stories. So, but a lot of people actually, I've discovered, like to hear the same story repeated.
Do you guys like to hear the same stories?
Well, yeah. But I am very aware that you try and put a different tilt on it, a different angle on it, but you also want to keep people happy by playing your greatest hits. But having said that, I don't ask me questions. You probably have heard the stories too many times, or maybe not actually. There's not that many faces out there.
A lot of new faces. Hands up, which first Doctor Who convention this is?
Wow, that's
yeah, there's a lot of new faces.
Okay, I'll bring out the old stories then. Let's give you the prompting question.
Okay, yes sir.
Well, you mentioned that you were a fan when you were younger, and then one of the things that you grew up with Doctor Who to some extent, but I'm sure that there's quite a few people in this room that grew up with Doctor Who. Myself, since I was about 4 years old, I grew up with Doctor Who on PBS. PBS used to play it, and then of course now you have Sci-Fi Channel and so on. And the thing is that such a role as Doctor Who, I mean, this Campion that you've done, and it's really good and things like that. All Creatures Great and Small, and people will watch that, older episodes, but I'm sure you'll find people in the room like myself that still has VHS tapes that watches it, and we've actually worn them out. And the thing is like the Five Doctors. So you are my favorite Doctor because I love it. Grew up with Five Doctors. I had a Five Doctors poster up on my wall since I was 10. Things like that.
You stood at the end of his bed with night vision goggles.
So the thing is, having done that part, when you came to be the Doctor, when you got that call, was it, that's a neat show that I watched, or did you realize that it would become so big as it is?
No, you don't realise that. No, I had no idea, because I think that when I started, I think the convention thing was in its infancy, and I really wasn't aware of the fandom side of it at all. I mean, I think I did my first ever convention in America. I think I was working on the program, but it hadn't gone out. It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the Hotel Camelot. Very strange hotel. But I had no idea. I mean, that was the very beginning, and I did very early conventions actually in Florida. The first few conventions after that were done in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, and I think someone mentioned on this morning someone were here as well. Yeah. So no, I had no idea. And of course, what you didn't also know was that things like videotape would take off in the way it would, or DVDs, and that people would have access to so many cable channels, and you'd be on TV. At that time in Britain, you maybe, if you got one repeat of the series you were in, you were lucky. Then it was never seen again, and that was the way it had always been. Now, of course, it's a different world. The very first TV thing I did was the Tomorrow People, and I remember thinking at the time, I'm so glad no one will ever see this ever again. And now there's a damn DVD of it. So no, I had no idea.
In fairness, Gary Russell was a child actor who was in the famous Five in the 70s, and he hates the fact that it's now available on DVD.
It does haunt you. It means everything, you know, you just thought. The good stuff, you think, oh, it's a shame no one will ever see it again.
What do you feel about when you see fans, I know this happened in Chicago, I think it was Chicago or Galway, when fans come up to you and say, hey, I met you 20 years ago, and they show you pictures of you wearing this 90s clothing.
Yes, I know. It's very embarrassing clothing, yes. It makes me wish I'd just sort of worn a nice suit. I never tried to wear velvet jackets with no pockets or loud shirts with big ties, or, you know, or have those jackets where you roll the sleeves of the jackets up, you know. That's very 90s, isn't it? Cool, really. Anyway, sorry.
So, that's okay. The thing is, you know, so are you pleased with seeing it become as big as it is? I mean, there's people of your generation before, and young people here. I've seen little children and stuff. It's become sort of an institution.
Yes.
And worldwide, you know. So when you took that part, you never really thought that, wow, I'm going to be being watched and things like that. Because I mean, I can look back, and I'm sure there's people also that look back and like childhood drawings, the TARDIS, and things
We are
like
going to
that.
have to speed up a little bit because we have a lot of people behind you.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see.
But
that.
no, I didn't have any idea. No, you just
have
don't.
people's lives.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I think it's great that the series came back and that it's you know, immensely popular now. But no, I had no idea about it. But it's fine with me. It's never really affected my career as such. It's, you know, I've moved on to other things. If it haunted me and meant that no one ever employed me for anything, that would be, you know, I'd probably hate it. But it's been fine.
Okay, thanks a lot. And then we have I have you as an action figure on my shelf. Oh, you're going to play your recorder for us.
Can you really play that?
Yes.
Thank you.
So you're going to ask your question in the form of music.
Yes. Interpretive dance, perhaps. No, I have tons of things I could ask you, of course. You know,
One.
what was it like to work with all those other doctors, all those other things. But I guess one question I was asking about, you mentioned earlier about when Adric was killed off and short straws and such things. But I read somewhere that Nyssa was originally supposed to be removed and be killed, and you fought to keep her because you had a very special sort of fatherly relationship with her as a character.
Yes, that's probably absolutely
And
true.
she was my favorite of your companions. You had many great companions. Turlo had a fantastic backstory that came out, lots of great stuff. But really liked Nyssa a lot.
A lot of teenage boys liked Nyssa.
But I just liked her character good. And you had one lovely relationship. And what was it like to work with her? And was that true? Was she supposed to be killed off? And how did you?
I think that's probably true. I think I did fight to have her stay in the series, yes, because I just felt that she fitted the bill as a companion. And what John tried to do, and all credit to him for trying to do this, he wanted to make, he knew that part of the problem was that the companions weren't that interesting. So he tried to make them interesting, but I think in the wrong way. So he tried to make, Janet didn't want to be there, basically, that was her raison d'etre.
Turlo wanted to kill you.
Turlo wanted to kill me. And not really until the new series, I think, until the character of Rose, did they discover how to make a companion work properly. Right, and that is simply, you just write a good character. You know, you don't have to be complicated or have that much of a backstory. You just have to have a believable character that works and an objective. But I just thought Nyssa was, you know, I just liked that idea of the simpatico between the Doctor and her, yeah.
Do you have any funny anecdotes about working with Sarah?
I don't know if I have funny anecdotes about Sarah. That wasn't quite the right cue, really. The Janet one might have been the right cue.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, we'll get on to that anecdote.
Find him in the bar later.
Just a real quick thing. It's so cool that you're going to be on Lewis, and because I was also a big fan of the Campion series, so that's all I want to say.
yeah.
Big fan of Campion. That was a great series. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've actually got to say that my favourite thing that you did was A Very Peculiar Practice.
Yes, that was, yes. I mean, I think that it was a brilliantly written series. Andrew Davis wrote it, you know, and I think it was brilliant. I don't know if anyone's seen Very Peculiar Practice. The second series is very relevant, really, because it was actually about, it was a time of Thatcher's Britain, where she wanted to sort of bring in sort of private finance into everything, and the idea was that she was sort of privatise universities And they had an American Vice Chancellor brought in, who's a sort of Jack Kennedy figure. It was fantastic series. Seek it out if you can.
It's worth it. Yes, hello.
Hello. As far as the new series goes, the last 3 Doctors, since I think, which storyline would you say is your favorite?
Oh, the last 3 Doctors?
Yes.
Well, a storyline. I think the one I rather like the sort of the Bad Wolf one. The Bad Wolf storyline, because it was kind of there, but it wasn't there. You know, it was never confusing to whatever story was going on, and yet it all was all together in the end. It may be just age, but I have noticed in the last series, because I do still sit and watch it, is that now my children have to explain it to me. And for years I would have to go, no, what's happening now, Louis? This is happening now. And I go, now I just say, what's happening? What? What is that? But that's really actually the way it was. You know, Douglas Adams said to me once, he was a script editor when Tom Baker was doing it. He said, the real secret of Doctor Who is you have to make it simple enough for the adults to understand, but complicated enough to hold the children's interest. And really that's what it's all about.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you. Hello.
Hello. Peter, when you did the series, it was 26 episodes. I guess they were shot over a fairly concentrated block. These days, British television seems to be 6 to 12 episodes per season, although longer. Given that, if you were jumping into the role today, would you still hold to that 3-season rule, or would you wait for a certain set number of episodes, or see if it would interfere with the rest of the stuff you wanted to do?
Well, don't forget, they're effectively the 10 or 12 episodes they do are longer than the original, so it works out, I think, maybe not quite as long as the original series, but certainly longer than just, it's not really 10 episodes, it's 10:45 minutes, isn't it, against, 12, 45 minutes. It's about the quality of the end product. I mean, there's no doubt that the fact we did 26 or 24 or whatever it was when we were hit by strikes, that you're really pushing it to keep a kind of level of quality there, and sometimes that's compromised quite badly. So I would prefer to do the 10 episodes, but with making sure they're jolly good, than just do the extra number. I think I'd still go on seasons, actually. It's kind of the imprint rather than actually just the number of episodes.
What was your favourite episode that you actually did?
Mine I did. Oh, it has to be Caves of Androzani. It was like a breath of fresh air. I was actually enjoying the last season quite a lot, the 3rd season that I did. But it wasn't really, until we got to Caves of Androzani, where really everything came together, director and writer, and just everything was just, it was just so many new ideas that were going on.
Was there a point where you sort of went, hang on, I want to stay another season?
Well, no, I didn't think that, but I just think it's great to go out on this story. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I want to ask you about Law & Order UK. Were you aware of the American series, and did you watch the American series as a starting off point, and how did you came about with that role?
I wasn't an avid follower of the American series. I had watched the American series, but there seemed to me so many different versions of it. It got very confusing because you'd sit down and you'd watch it. I'm going to watch Law & Order now. Hang on, that's completely different people. and so then, of course, you guys are this sort of endless spin-offs of the series. But I did quite like it because it doesn't. You don't have quite the same problem in Britain. We have a problem that every series that they do, they seem to want to make into a soap opera. So if they have a police series, they seem to want to make it about who's having an affair with who in the police station, which policeman's marriage is breaking up, and then the crime always becomes secondary to that. And the same with hospital dramas. It's never actually about anything to do with the hospital. It's all to do with who's having it off with someone else. So I was taken by Law & Order, but it was kind of a procedural program, and it was very much about the crime, the detection of the crime and then the prosecution of the crime, and that appealed to me, because I said about 2 or 3 years ago, before I did Law & Order, I just want, why can't we make series that are about what they're about? So that if they're about a hospital, let's make it about a hospital. And if it's about a police station, let's make it about a police, detectives, not about everything else that goes on. That's not to say you can't have that element in it, but it's just that, it turns, if you're not careful, everything turns into a soap. And that's been a problem in Britain. I don't know if it's a societal problem over here.
Yeah.
Apparently it is.
How well judged am I?
I'll preface this with you're my mother's favorite doctor.
Is that the same with that past master? Pan him out of the edit. Let's take him out of the edit.
I have a twofold question. You said you wanted to do it for 3 years. Did you have an idea, like a plan on how you wanted to play the 3 years, or you just said, I'll let them write and then I'll act it? And my second part was, from a scale of 1 to 10, how crazy was John Nathan Turner at the point that you would work with him? Because towards Colin Baker's, he seemed kind of like he was losing it a little bit.
For those of you who couldn't hear that,
I didn't. Yes.
The question was effectively, how was your arc? If you had to do it, and how mad was John Nathan Turner?
I didn't really have an arc because I was in no position to dictate an arc. I just felt, you have the stories. There wasn't really a backstory in those days. It was the story's continuing story. It was who your companions happened to be at the time. So I just thought that 3 years was long enough to do a series. I felt, and I know Tom agrees that he'd done it sort of for too long, really, and he was finding it difficult. And I was quite young, and I did have an eye to work afterwards. So I didn't want to do too long, so that people went, oh no, we can't use him. He was Doctor Who for 15 years. How crazy was John Nathan Turner? He wasn't really crazy. It's just that his brilliance was about getting publicity for the programme. I think rather than a devotion to the programme. So when we came up against each other, we got on. We never really fell out, John and I, at all. But we would have sort of conversations about direction that he was, and because he just wanted to do things and get people in the programme that would enable him to get publicity for the programme. Whereas what's, I think, good about the series now is that the first 2 producers of the new series have been probably the biggest Doctor Who fans that you could ever find on planet Earth. And so their commitment to the programme is absolute. And John's wasn't, and that doesn't mean to say it's bad, because it seldom was in those days, but he wanted to make a successful series, and in a way, I suppose, this maybe tells you something. His ambition in life was to produce a soap. Again, I'm not suggesting he would turn Doctor Who into a soap.
The DVD commentary seemed like a soap later on, now I'll be honest.
I'm not doing this. Anyway, so I think it was more and more desperate measures to get publicity. So I think the slight sort of brainstorm we had with Colin's outfit, for example, was just about, let's make it so outrageous and silly that people will want to take pictures of it and we'll get on the front page of the newspapers. And it just seemed to be about that, and I'm not sure in the end, although that gives you publicity, and he was great at getting publicity when I was the Doctor, all the way through his producership of the series. He was great at getting publicity, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make, you're making a better programme. That's all.
Okay, thanks a lot. Hello.
Hello. First of all, you are my favorite Doctor.
You can live another day.
And I have a question. It's for my friend. She's not able to be here. She's actually in Russia at the moment.
So your friend has a question?
No. Well, I'm curious too. Between Tristan and the Doctor, who's closest to your personality? Your actual personality?
Well, as the Doctor is a 750-year-old alien from the planet Gallifrey, probably, I don't know, I think what happened, when I was very shy growing up, really absurdly shy, And I was absurdly shy actually when I went to drama school. And in a way that quite often happens with actors, that in a way acting is a form of escape from your shyness, and you can almost put on a mask, and you're just someone different, and you can do things that you couldn't possibly do. And I remember when I was playing Tristan, still very shy, I was asked to open a fete, kind of fates sort of in the local village, and I said, what the heck am I going to do? Because I've got to make a speech, and I can't do it. And Chris Timothy said to me, well, just go along and be Tristan. So I went, yeah, okay, so I just did. I went along, and I said, I don't drink beer at all, but I just said, welcome to the fete. At 2:30 we have the best pet competition, and I'll be in the beer tent. And at 3 o'clock we have the dog show, and I'll be in the beer tent. And people kind of liked it. So in a way, it's almost as if that me and Tristan merged into one. I found an outlet, in other words, to be a bit more outgoing through that character. And I'm not sure I was that before. Not to say that I'm pretending at all, but it's just a kind of, it's like a weight coming off your shoulders, a shyness. It's a strange thing. Funny enough, my 2 children also very shy, as was Georgia, my daughter. So it's a kind of inherited thing, and I think it's just, you find ways. Maybe not a surprise that Georgia's an actress. My 2 kids want to be actors as well. It's the end of the world. How are they going to look after me in an old people's home if they're actors? I've said that to them. That's no good. Become a doctor or something.
I think that's their plan.
Lawyer, please.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
A quick question, 2 questions actually.
You're texting while you're asking. Or have you written it down there?
I wrote it down.
This is the 21st century.
My brother introduced me to the original Tomorrow People. You are my favorite doctor, by the way.
Thank you.
I was just wondering how you got into that part.
The Tomorrow People?
Yes. And the second one would be, how did the decorative vegetable come about for your doctor?
Okay, the Tomorrow People was just, I went along, I've never done TV before, and I went along and discovered that I was going up to play a space cowboy called Elmer. I was at the time with Sandra Dickinson, who I don't think we actually were married at that point. So then she got a part in it as well, and she obviously was quite good with the American accent. I've no idea how good the American accent was, but it helped that I was going out with her. So that was it really. There was no trick to it, just like any other actor going off for a job. But you remember thinking, this is great. The only downside of it, when we were making it, all the cast of Tomorrow People loved it because it was funny. Normally it was a very kind of serious program about, the Tomorrow People saving the world, and this was a kind of comic look at them. And the actors loved it, and the director loved it, and the producer loved it. And they said to me at the end of the 3 parts, we're going to write a sequel to this. You've got to come back and do it. And then it went out on television, and the kids hated it. Absolutely hated it. They didn't like their Tomorrow People being sent up. So we never did any more of that, which actually was very lucky for me.
It's available on DVD.
What's the question?
The celery.
Oh, the celery. Well, very quickly, the celery, John Nathan Turner said, I want to think of something very interesting for you to have on your lapel. Tom had a scarf. I think you should wear something interesting on the lapel. So he came in one day and he said, I've got a great idea. It should be a stick of celery. And I said, yeah, great. Why? And he said, I have no idea. It's not a stick of celery. I said, well, that's fine then, as long as you explain it before I leave. And then we got to the very last story, Peter Davison, and I got the script, and I just remember, I went up to him and said, look, John, you've had 3 years and you haven't explained the celery. So they went away and they did a rewrite, which explained the celery, that I think he's allergic to... Yeah, what's it called? What's the gas called? Oh, is that? Oh, right, that's it, yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, I'm allergic to that gas. And the celery is the antidote, and that's the reason that the celery is there. Thank you very much. Hi.
My question is, what was your favorite memory on being on set?
What's your fondest memory on set?
My fondest memory on set. Okay, right, I'm going to tell this classic story now because it doesn't really fit in, but I'm going to tell it anyway, just for an old time's sake. So I enjoyed it. So in the second series, the second season, the girl companions lost most of their clothes. I can't explain it except apparently one father wrote in and said, I love Doctor Who, but what's happened to the companions' outfits? Because both of the girls were dressed from head to foot. So John Nathan Turner, being John Nathan Turner, said, well, we're going to design skimpy outfits then. So they designed this outfit for Janet, which was kind of like what you call like a boob tube. You know? Remember it in the second season? It was sort of like a corsety thing. Right? That had no visible means of support. And she would do nothing but complain about this outfit. All the time. Oh, it keeps falling down. I can't bear it. What did they design this bloody silly thing? So we were coming back from lunch one day in our outfits in Television Centre. And we were walking along the big long corridor. And Janet was going on, this damn thing keeps slipping down. It's so uncomfortable. So I stopped. I turned to Janet. And we were all there. Matthew was there and Sarah was there. And I said to her, Janet, would you do me a favour? I said, would you please reach as far above your head as you can? And I said, now, if you were wearing one of these things, girls, and some bloke comes up to you and says, excuse me, but would you reach as far above your head as you can? Would you do it? No.
Exactly. But if the doctor asked you, would you do it?
Well, that's all the question. See me later. Okay, anyway, Janet Fielding did. She reached up as far as she could. She just went, without thinking, just going. And of course, the inevitable happened. And just as the entire camera crew were walking along the corridor in the other direction, and it was one of the great moments. Because I just laughed and laughed and ran away. Oh dear. Sorry. I just had to tell that classic story. Thank you.
Hello.
Okay, I have two really quick questions.
Okay.
One, what was it like running around the console in times of emergency? And two, looking back on it now, how do you feel about being arrested by your future self?
I always thought there was some conspiracy going on there. I was to do with being arrested by Colin Baker. It was clearly just, and he took the part so he could inveigle his way into the series and become the next Doctor. I didn't think anything of it at the time, of course. But now I see, because the thing about Colin, so looking back, because they tried to keep it a secret. I remember walking. I said I was leaving the series, and then we were filming at BBC, and I happened to walk into this pub, and there's John Nathan Turner sitting there talking to Colin Baker. And the only difference between the two of them was the colour of their hair. Because Colin had this sort of massive curly blonde hair, and John had this massive curly dark hair. And I thought, well, clearly he's going to Colin to clone. He's going to be a clone of John Nathan Turner. It was fine. It was fine. But he often talks about, yes, killing me. I think he was after the part. Quite brazenly and openly. And it's very nice.
And what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, what was the other part?
How was it running around the TARDIS console?
It was great, because I loved it, because I sort of had a new design with lots of new buttons to press, as I said earlier, and it was just a matter of how many I could press in any particular thing, and to make myself look busy, and to make it difficult for the dub.
On the Gallifrey video, obviously, for those of you who haven't seen it, it is online. On the Gallifrey video, the whole point was, the first year Peter couldn't make it, he did a video saying, I'm really sorry, I can't make it. The second year, they made a joke that he wasn't going to be there, and then at the end he goes to the Doctor Experience, he goes into the original TARDIS,
I missed the
presses the buttons, and he appears in the TARDIS. How did it feel going back to that TARDIS console again?
Well, it was a miraculous piece of good fortune, because I started this video, because I thought I'd done this one previously about me apologising for not being there. I thought it would be nice if I went there and had a video to bring. So I came up with this idea of me forgetting and missing the flight. And I thought, how the heck am I going to end this? Because I had no idea how I'm going to end it. I'm actually going to go to the convention. And then I happened to read in the paper that they had this Doctor Who exhibition in House Court. So I rang them up And I said, you know, would you...
Hello, I'm the doctor.
Yeah, hello, I'm the doctor. I said, hello, I'm the doctor. No, actually, I went to Stephen Moffat and said, I cleared it, but I said, would you be all right if I went along and filmed? He said, yeah, go on. So I rang up the thing. I said, excuse me, I was the doctor. Could I come in and film for a day? Because it hadn't actually opened there. I think it actually opened when we were in California. And they said, yeah, no, come along. And it wasn't until I got there with my little... I thought I was just going to run in and then sort of do a bit of... I didn't know what I was going to do really. So when I got there, the guy there said, okay, we rebuilt your TARDIS console. And he restored the old TARDIS console precisely, even to the event that he did the working rotor. And he said, if you like, when you come into the set, because I filmed me walking into the TARDIS and then going up to the console, he said, if you like, I'll crouch down underneath and I'll put two wires together so it will start when I push the lever. I said, brilliant. So what you don't see is when I walk into the TARDIS and I take my coat off and I start pressing buttons, and as I slow the lever, I'm saying, now! Under my breath. Putting two bits of lever, you hear the spark. And the time motor starts to go, so it's brilliant. That was fantastic. And it was a fantastic rebuild of this set.
And it is on video, it's well worth watching.
Yeah.
We have time for
I'll
two last
retweet
questions.
it. I'll retweet it when I get. You know, I join tweet.
I'm a follower.
Are you really?